Your blood sugar looked fine before bed. You woke up, checked again, and it was higher. You didn't eat, you didn't snack, you didn't touch a cracker, and yet there it was. That isn't a coincidence. And it isn't your imagination. What most people don't know is that some of the biggest forces pushing your morning blood sugar up have nothing to do with what you ate. They happen in the 4 hours before you even open your eyes while you're asleep, while you think your body's just resting. Stay with me. I'm going to show you exactly what's happening overnight, the 5 drinks that may help, and one warning sign on your morning meter that means you should call your doctor this week, not next month. I'm an emergency medicine physician. I've spent years in the ER watching people arrive with blood sugar complications that built quietly for months or years before anything felt wrong. The pattern I kept seeing wasn't dramatic, it was slow, gradual, and almost always it was something small done differently at night that could have changed the direction earlier. That's what today is about. A disclaimer first: nothing on this list is a cure. Nothing here replaces medications your doctor has prescribed for you. Think of them as tools, small additions to a larger plan. If you're managing blood sugar with insulin or any diabetes medications, please check with your doctor before adding anything new, especially the first drink on our list. More on why in a moment. Now, let's start with what's actually happening while you sleep, because this changes how you look at everything else. Here's what your body does at 4 a.m. Most people assume blood sugar is controlled by food and only food. You eat, your blood sugar rises, your body handles it. But here's what most people are never told: between roughly 3 and 8 in the morning, your body releases a wave of hormones: cortisol, growth hormone, glucagon, and adrenaline. These hormones are designed to prepare you for waking up. They signal your liver to release stored glucose into your bloodstream. Think of it like a factory that powers up before the morning shift begins. The liver receives a signal and it starts releasing glucose whether you ate last night or not. Research from the American Diabetes Association confirms that in people without blood sugar problems, the pancreas counterbalances this surge with just enough insulin. The morning rise is smoothed out, barely noticeable. But for someone with insulin resistance, prediabetes, or type 2 diabetes, that counterbalance is weaker. The cortisol and growth hormone surge rises by 50 to 75% in those pre-dawn hours. The glucose pours out of the liver, and the insulin response can't keep up. That's called the dawn phenomenon. And it is the reason your reading was higher in the morning, even though you hadn't eaten. Now, there's a different but related pattern worth knowing about: the Somogyi effect. This is when blood sugar actually drops too low during the night and your body overcorrects by releasing a flood of glucose. The morning result looks similar: elevated fasting blood sugar, but the cause and the fix are different. If your readings are high in the morning, but you're also waking up with night sweats or feeling jittery at 3 a.m., mention that to your doctor. That pattern points toward the Somogyi effect rather than the dawn phenomenon. For most people, though, the culprit is the dawn response. And what makes it worse are 3 things most people never connect to blood sugar: poor sleep, mild dehydration, and chronic low-grade inflammation. The 5 drinks on this list each address one of those 3 drivers. Let's start. Drink number 5, apple cider vinegar water. Most people know apple cider vinegar as a pantry staple. What they don't expect is to see it in a conversation about morning blood sugar. A 2025 systematic review and meta-analysis analyzing controlled clinical trials found that apple cider vinegar reduced fasting blood glucose by an average of roughly 22 mg/dl in people with type 2 diabetes. The researchers believe the key is acetic acid, the compound that gives vinegar its bite. It appears to slow how quickly food leaves the stomach and blunt how rapidly glucose enters the bloodstream. Think of it this way: without vinegar, glucose enters your blood fast, like a sudden surge of cars all merging at once. Acetic acid slows that merge. The glucose still arrives, but more gradually, giving your insulin a better chance to respond. If you want to try it, 1 to 2 teaspoons in a full glass of water about 30 minutes before bed. Always dilute it. Drinking it straight can erode tooth enamel and irritate the esophagus over time. But here's what the original research often leaves out, and it matters, especially if you're over 60 and already on medication. If you're taking any blood sugar medication, insulin, sulfonylureas like glipizide or glimepiride, or even metformin apple cider vinegar can have additive effects on lowering blood sugar. That sounds good, but combined, they can push blood sugar lower than intended. That is a risk, not a benefit. Before trying this one, have a brief conversation with your primary care doctor or pharmacist. It's worth the phone call. If you have kidney disease or a history of gastroparesis where the stomach empties too slowly, hold off until you've spoken with your doctor. Both conditions change the calculation. The mistake hiding in your evening routine. Before drink number four, I want to flag something I've seen often enough to give it its own moment. Most people understand that dessert or bread late at night can affect morning blood sugar. What surprises them is learning that fruit juice, sweet tea, and sports drinks do the same thing, and the people drinking those often believe they're making a healthier choice. Fruit juice can carry as much sugar as soda. The fiber is stripped away, so the sugar hits the bloodstream fast. Sweet tea is the same problem. And sports drinks, unless you're exercising hard before bed, are sugar water with a branding budget. I had a patient, I'll call him Dennis, a 67-year-old retired mail carrier from Des Moines who couldn't figure out why his morning numbers kept running high. He had given up soda completely. He was walking daily. He was eating better than he had in years. What he hadn't noticed was that he'd replaced his evening Coke with a large glass of orange juice. Honest mistake. Same sugar impact. When he switched to water or chamomile tea in the evenings, his morning readings started improving within 2 weeks. The change that helped wasn't adding something, it was removing one thing. Drink number four, chamomile tea. Most people reach for chamomile because it's calming. The research found something more useful beneath that. Several clinical studies have reported improvements in fasting blood sugar among people who drank chamomile tea consistently. Part of the benefit appears to come from compounds called apigenin and other flavonoids found naturally in the plant. But and this is the part that most blood sugar conversations miss entirely, may come from what chamomile does for sleep quality. Because poor sleep directly raises morning blood sugar, not because of anything you ate, because of what your stress hormones do while you're awake when you should be asleep. 1 cup, unsweetened, about 30 minutes before bed. No honey, no sugar, just the tea. For many people, it's the easiest entry point on this list. Inexpensive, safe, and calming enough that the habit actually sticks. The hidden driver, what bad sleep does to your blood sugar. This is the piece most people never hear. I want you to pay close attention here, because this may be the thing that explains what's been confusing you. People track their food carefully. They count carbs. They watch portions, and they're still waking up with higher numbers than expected. The answer in many of those cases isn't what they ate, it's how they slept. When you sleep fewer than 6 hours, or when your sleep is fragmented and restless, your body activates its stress response. Cortisol doesn't follow its normal overnight pattern. Instead of falling gradually as you sleep and rising gently before dawn, it stays elevated. Your liver gets the glucose release signal earlier, harder, and longer than it should. A study published in PLOS1 found that just 5 nights of sleep restriction significantly increased both blood glucose and cortisol levels in healthy adults with no change to their diet. Their bodies produced more glucose simply because the stress hormone system was running hard. A 2024 meta analysis confirmed the same connection. Sleep deprivation reliably elevates cortisol, and elevated cortisol means elevated blood sugar. Research has found that up to 62% of people with glucose dysregulation also experience poor sleep quality. Think of it this way: poor sleep presses the same biochemical button that the dawn phenomenon presses. You get a double dose of the glucose signal, one from the natural hormonal cycle and one from the stress response that fragmented sleep triggers. Here's what makes this directly relevant after 60. Sleep architecture changes with age. Deep restorative sleep becomes harder to sustain. The hormonal buffer that smooth things out at 45 is thinner at 65. The same habits that kept your morning numbers steady 10 years ago may not be enough now, not because you've changed your diet, but because your sleep has. If your numbers are higher than expected and your eating is actually pretty controlled, look at your sleep before blaming your food. Practical steps: anything that consistently improves your sleep quality, chamomile tea, a cooler bedroom, a regular bedtime, less screen time after 8 p.m., cutting caffeine by noon may have a measurable effect on your morning blood sugar. Not immediately, over 2 to 4 weeks of consistency. This is the connection most blood sugar conversations never make. Drink number 3: Fenugreek tea. Fenugreek has been used in cooking for centuries. The research on it for blood sugar is more recent and more solid than most people expect. The key is a type of soluble fiber called galactomannan, found in significant amounts in fenugreek seeds. Soluble fiber forms a slow moving gel inside the digestive tract. When that gel is present, glucose is absorbed more gradually. Think of it like adding congestion to a one-lane road. The glucose still gets through, but not in a single rush. Several clinical studies have shown meaningful improvements in fasting blood sugar among people who use fenugreek consistently. Not dramatic, not a cure, but consistent, measurable movement in the right direction when used as part of an overall approach. You can find fenugreek tea bags at most Indian grocery stores and many mainstream supermarkets. 1 cup before bed, unsweetened. One caution: fenugreek can interact with blood thinners and may affect blood sugar enough to require adjustment if you're already on diabetes medications. Your pharmacist can help you think through whether it's appropriate. In your case, that conversation costs you nothing. A simple self monitoring tool, the 5 day log. Before we get to drink number 2, I want to give you something practical because tracking a pattern matters more than reacting to a single reading. Here's what I'd suggest: for the next 5 mornings before you eat or drink anything, check your blood sugar and write down 3 numbers. First, the fasting glucose reading. Second, how many hours you slept the night before, even roughly. Third, how many times you woke up after 5 days. Look for a pattern. On the nights when you slept poorly or woke up repeatedly, what happened to the morning reading? For most people with glucose sensitivity, the correlation is clear. Worse sleep, higher morning number. This 5 day log takes about 2 minutes a day, and it often answers a question that's been frustrating people for months. It also gives your doctor something specific to look at, not just my numbers are high, but my numbers are consistently higher on nights when I sleep fewer than 6 hours. That specificity changes the conversation. The 130 warning, what your morning meter is really saying, let's talk about a number you should know. According to the American Diabetes Association, a fasting blood sugar below 100 milligrams DL is normal. Between 100 and 125 mg DL puts you in the pre-diabetes range. At 126 mg DL or above on 2 separate occasions, that meets the threshold for a diabetes diagnosis. But here's the number that I want you to take seriously. If your morning fasting readings are consistently coming in above 130 mg DL 3 or more mornings in a row, that is a specific signal. Data from the Diabetes Prevention Program found that people with consistently elevated fasting glucose in that range had a 56% higher likelihood of progressing to type 2 diabetes within 1 year. That isn't a reason to panic. It is a reason to call your doctor's office this week and schedule an appointment. Ask specifically about your A1C and your fasting glucose trend. If you're on Medicare, your annual wellness visit costs nothing. No copay, no deductible. Most people never book it. The visit includes lab work, and you can request your A1C and fasting glucose right there. Don't ignore consistently elevated morning numbers. Your meter is trying to tell you something. Drink number 2, warm turmeric milk. I'll be honest about turmeric. I spent a long time dismissing it. The wellness world makes too many promises about too many things, and turmeric gets its fair share of that treatment. Then I looked at the actual research, not the blogs, The published trials and my thinking changed. Turmeric contains a compound called curcumin, which has been studied for its anti inflammatory properties. Here's why that matters for blood sugar. Chronic low grade inflammation appears to interfere with how efficiently insulin works. Think of it like corrosion on a lock. The key insulin still fits, but the mechanism is stiff. It doesn't turn as smoothly. Glucose stays in circulation longer than it should. Curcumin may help reduce some of that inflammatory interference, which over time may support better insulin function. Here's the critical detail most people miss: you need to add black pepper. Black pepper contains piperine, which dramatically increases how much curcumin your body actually absorbs. Without it, most of the curcumin passes through without being used. A small pinch of black pepper changes the absorption picture significantly. Use unsweetened almond milk, oat milk, or another unsweetened milk alternative. Warm it gently. Add half a teaspoon of turmeric and a pinch of black pepper. Nothing sweetened. The moment you add honey or sweetened milk, you've changed what the drink is doing to your blood sugar overnight. A word for anyone trying hard and still frustrated: if you've made it this far, you've probably already put in real effort. You've changed what you eat. Maybe you've started walking. You've cut back on things you used to enjoy, and the numbers on your meter are still not moving the way you hoped. I want to say this plainly: managing blood sugar after 60 is genuinely harder than it was at 40 or 45. Not because you're failing, because the body's insulin response changes with age. That's physiology, not a lack of effort. The dawn phenomenon tends to become more pronounced. Sleep quality often shifts. Stress hormone baselines can rise over time. The same discipline that kept everything stable at 55 may not be sufficient at 67. Understanding that doesn't mean giving up. It means shifting your focus. You're not just managing what you eat, you're managing sleep, hydration, and the inflammation that quietly accumulates over years. You're watching patterns across a week, not reacting to a single reading. Small changes done consistently accumulate into real outcomes. I've watched that happen many times. Drink number one: water. Yes, after everything, the most important drink is plain water. Here's why. As we age, the body's thirst signaling becomes less reliable. Think of it like a fuel gauge that loses accuracy over the years. In younger bodies, the signal is clear when fluid levels drop. In older bodies, especially past 60, that warning signal comes later or sometimes barely at all. That's not carelessness. It's a normal physiological change, which means many adults over 60 are moving through the day mildly dehydrated without realizing it. Here's the mechanism. When the body detects low fluid levels, it releases a hormone called vasopressin. Vasopressin tells the kidneys to conserve water. But vasopressin also signals the liver to release additional glucose, not because of the dawn phenomenon, not because of food, because your body's protecting its fluid balance and releasing glucose as part of that protective response. You can wake up with elevated blood sugar from dehydration alone. A moderate glass of water, 8 to 10 ounces, about 30 to 60 minutes before bed, not a full bottle, just a glass. Warm, cold, room temperature, it doesn't matter. What matters is making it a consistent habit. Water holds the top spot because, unlike every other option on this list, it carries no drug interactions, no contraindications for most people, and no side effects beyond a possible bathroom trip if you drink too much too close to bedtime. It's the lowest friction, safest tool on the list, and it's the one most overlooked. Your bedtime blood sugar blueprint. Let's bring this together. The morning reading that confuses so many people isn't random. It's the result of what happened in the hours before dawn. And those hours can be influenced by small, consistent choices. The pattern to carry with you: your liver starts releasing glucose before you wake up, driven by a hormone surge that peaks between 3 and 8 a.m. That process gets amplified by three things most people don't connect to: blood sugar, poor sleep, mild dehydration, and chronic low grade inflammation. The five drinks each address one of those drivers. Water reduces dehydration triggered glucose release. Chamomile tea supports better sleep, which quiets the cortisol response. Fenugreek tea adds fiber that slows the glucose curve. Turmeric with black pepper targets the inflammation that stiffens insulin function. And apple cider vinegar slows gastric emptying. Though, check with your doctor first if you're on any blood sugar medications. What to remove? Anything sweetened in the evening, juice, sweet tea, sports drinks. These can do more damage to your morning numbers than a late meal. And many people don't realize they're the source. What to watch for? If your fasting numbers are consistently above 130 megadolars, that's the signal to schedule an appointment with your primary care doctor this week. If you're on Medicare, ask about your free annual wellness visit and request your A1C at the same time. Most people never use that benefit. It's worth using one step for tonight. Don't try to add all five drinks. Pick one, the one you'll actually do. For most people, that's a glass of water or a cup of chamomile tea. Start there, do it consistently for 2 weeks. Notice if your morning numbers shift. Notice how you sleep. Notice your energy the following day. Here's why I think this actually matters beyond the numbers. The people I watched do well over time weren't the ones chasing the most aggressive protocols. They were the ones who understood what their body was doing, made small adjustments they could sustain, and paid attention to what those adjustments produced. They stayed in their own homes longer. They drove themselves to appointments longer. They kept up with their grandkids longer. Blood sugar management after 60 isn't just a lab number. It protects your kidneys, your heart, your eyesight, your ability to think clearly, and your ability to stay independent. Those things are worth a glass of water before bed. One thing, consistently. Start tonight. I'll see you in the next one.